Let me hear you say Crux, yeah! Crux, yeah! Let me hear you say Crux, yeah! Crux, yeah! Crux, yeah podcast.
Crux proper.
Crux, yeah, podcast, man. Back at you with another week. Thank you so much, everybody that's been tuning in from, my new, brand new comedy listeners, and then also my, We Are the Flesh music listeners and things. Thank you so much for all the downloads. It's been great. Today, this week, is episode 20. It's a big deal, man. And I have none other than a very special guest, Mr. Ryan Perrio, here for that. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Ironic, on my podcast, I released my interview as episode 22, so it feels like every episode 20 of somebody's podcast, that's where I'll be.
If it's the 20, man, that's where you're going to be. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for coming out, man. I know it's like a little bit of a trek, just like we were talking about from where you live versus where I live, but I really do appreciate it, man. And you taking the time, especially with, like how long, you've been doing comedy and stuff like that. It's always really great to have someone that's like super seasoned that I can always talk to. And it was like when I had Alonzo Bowden on my podcast at the beginning. And the only reason why that was because I've been friends with him for years. And he was nice enough to come by. So it's always cool when I can have somebody, that has like a lot of wisdom, like in the craft, come by that I can like have a conversation with and chat with and stuff. But yeah, like I was saying before, you were asking me before we got started, like what I used to record and all that stuff. Like I said, man, I'm just lazy, so I just do GarageBand. You know what I mean? It serves the purpose. But you said like a lot of podcasters use Audacity and stuff.
Yeah, it's a free software, so we're cheap.
Yeah.
GarageBand or Audacity is usually, unless you're doing like professional podcast editing, like comedian Tony Casillas does a lot of professional editing, Gage Tijerina. Those guys will have like a subscription to Adobe Premiere and things like that. And they rave about that. And some people use StreamYard.
Sure. Yeah. The Adobe Premiere definitely is great for a lot of the video editing stuff. So yeah, for sure. And like I've told a couple guests, like I was telling you before we got started, like when I start the new year off in 2022, like right now I'm just doing like one camera like on the phone, and the biggest feature is just the audio. But I'm gonna do multicam on the video. I've edited multicam before, like in post for podcasts, and it's a lot of work. But so I already know kind of what I'm getting into. Something about like weekly guests, weekly release schedule, multicam. It's gonna be a lot of editing work, but hey, man, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna dive in. I'm up for it.
I was going to say maybe start monthly or bi-weekly and then just...
I could, man, but I'm crazy, dude. Like I'm OCD about that. Like I'm like, because my release date for this podcast, for Crux, is Tuesdays, right? And I'm like, dude, I can't, even if I'm publishing on Tuesday night, at least I put my mind at ease and go like, all right, I made my Tuesday release date. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I get that way too sometimes with guests. I'm like, okay, I got to get some interviews because I'm looking fairly light in my... to do editing likewise. I like only have like 7 or 8 episodes. I'm like, oh, okay. And it's like a balance of trying to do people I can see like in sight to do for the holiday season, just people that are local. So I'm not like, hey, some guy in, Seattle, you want to link up on Thanksgiving Day and record an episode. Like I try to, schedule just a certain time to record so I don't interfere too much with comedy or my day job or other things I have going on. And I just like Saturday afternoons, I'm usually free. Let's go ahead. Let's get it done. And just do 1 to 2 episodes that Saturday. And hopefully we never get into a panic where, oh my God, I have no episodes to give out and it's Sunday.
Yeah, for sure, man. And once again, man, I really do appreciate you coming out here. But yeah, I haven't even had a chance to ask you, like, are you originally from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or?
I originally grew up in Houston. I moved up here like my sophomore year in high school. So I moved up here in like 93, 94. And I've lived here in Dallas-Fort Worth area in various locations like the Mid-Cities, Carrollton. Now I'm at Irving for that whole, I guess, almost 20 years now. Okay.
So you've been technically not maybe originally from the area, but you've been here a really long time. Yeah, that makes sense, man. So like I've been came out here from LA, which I am where I'm from at the beginning of the year. And but yeah, man, and that was pretty much that was like COVID related, just because everything got so crazy out there. And like I talk to my really close friends, including my best friend, pretty much on a weekly basis. It's gotten a lot better from where it was, you know what I mean? But in terms of everything being closed and everybody being disconnected and stuff like that. But I mean, just because it's such a big area, and when you pull everything back that much with that many people and that big of an area, obviously it's not going to happen overnight where it comes back to normal. You know what I mean? It's going to take a while. Yeah. Love it here though, man. Love it here. And then I've been, loving just diving in both feet to, doing stand-up comedy, man. And like, seeing you, like you actually, do shows and participate in that stuff. But I've just like, really enjoyed doing the open mics and like getting better and stuff like that. What I've noticed, and like you, obviously it's like on a completely different level of like experience. But the funny thing for me that I was going to tell you, because as you know, man, when you got guests for your podcast, you're always like thinking before they come over, like, what are we going to talk about? What am I going to do? What am I going to say? You know what I mean? So one of the things I was going to say, so in the small amount of time that I've been doing it, which is since June, right? So it's very, very new. Even though it's not been a lot of time at all, compared to where I started, like back at the beginning of the summer, when I'll see people like go up, kind of like we saw last Wednesday, you see a couple people go up for like their very first time and stuff, or maybe their very first couple times. I can, even if they never said anything, I could tell because I'm like, I see like the tiny little bit of experience you get, you know what I mean? You can see like, I can tell just because like the way they hold the mic, the way they're on stage, the way they're talking, the way they're presenting the ideas. It's like, dude, even if you didn't tell me it was one of your first times, I could tell, you know what I mean? It's not a matter of being good or bad. It's just like the energy, like the vibe, right?
It's that, and there's just little nuances that you can tell that somebody isn't, I would say it's people that are uncomfortable on stage, and you can see the rush to get into what they want to talk about versus taking a moment to acknowledge the room or to look around to see who's there. It's just basically you're singularly focused because all that anxiety and all that fear of going up and what's going to happen it's a fight or flight mechanism. So now you're in complete fight or flight mode, and people, panic. They'll just either just go past the light that we're supposed to end on, and they'll just keep going because they don't know to look for light. And and in a defense situation, you're just up there, fighting off a crowd of people that it's just all, I guess, lizard brain at that point.
Yeah. Right.
It's just enjoyable. Like you can see, like they don't move the mic out of the way because it's like, okay, that's a little nuance to let people know to not be distracted by what's this clutter on stage, or she's that mic stands right there. Just little things you slowly pick up on by osmosis, jonesing other people's sets. Like when I started, Paul Verghese, Mark Agee, Raj Sharma, those people were like in my position that I am now. Like and they're still above me. I would say I feel like they're like a level above me somewhere. Like I'll never feel like I'm on that level, but I feel at the same time like I know how they felt when I was new. And so I kind of also try to instill that in other people as well. And to kind of, somewhat pay attention and to, to meet people and get them, try to know who they are and try to, at least make them feel however long they decide to be in stand up, that at least somebody knows who they are.
Sure. Yeah. 100%. No, that totally makes sense. That's actually, now that you bring that up, that's one of the many reasons, but an important reason why I do this I do this podcast is because, I talk about this with like a lot of the younger, like guys that are, or younger comics, younger guys and girls that are, like in the same place that I am in terms of being very new, but they're a lot younger than me. Cause like I'm 36 and like I have a baby, like I have a wife, I have another baby on the way in January. So I'm not like in college. I'm not 19 years old, like living with my parents. Like I got responsibilities. Like I got people that depend on me. I'm committed to this and I really love like this art form and I want to learn about it. I take it very seriously in the sense that like I respect people that have been doing it a long time. You know what I mean? And I'm there to learn, but, at the same time, nor do I want to like sit at the bar till 2 a.m, like bullshitting with people. You know what I mean? Like I can't stay out till 4 a.m. and like, all this stuff. So it's like my compensation for getting to know people and like not being able to like hang as much is like having people over and having like a nice one-on-one conversation or a two-on-one conversation, getting to know someone better that maybe I wouldn't have known as much if, you know, if I have to take off, like if I'm at an open mic and I got to take off right after whenever I'm up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I try to supplement that with doing stuff like this, you know, because I'm not going to be able to always be out all night, every night, you know? And it's been cool. It's been cool. I've gotten to have conversations and get to know people that I wouldn't get to know as well otherwise.
Yeah.
You know?
And part of it, and unfortunately, that is one of the parts of it, is you have to be out till 3 a.m. I mean, it's unfair. Comedy is not a fair art form. There are people that maybe you may work harder than, but just may have a easier path to success, or, you know, levels of success as you go up, you know. Success for, you know, some people at the beginning levels doing a show for free, you know, 5 minutes on a weekend show with no pay. And as you get older, you know, a weekend show with pay. And then from there, you know, running a bar show, then a club guest spot. Then from there, maybe, you know, opening, you know, or doing a show in the Red Room. There's just all these different levels of success. And I think more of it comes to the validation that everybody strives for, just somebody to say, you know, they want to be picked for the kickball team. They just want that. They don't.
That's a great way to put it.
That it's just the idea that somebody recognizes that they think they're good at stand up is kind of more the joy than the actual show. And then for the first few years, you're going to suffer in silence for the most part. You're feeling like you go up at the end of the night, you never get a crowd, you never get to, you know, perform in front of real people or people that are, you know, looking for people to book shows. So it's like, you know, you feel like, how am I ever going to get noticed? And it gets hard. It's you wallow in obscurity. You feel like, you know, maybe if I just work with the club, maybe if I work the door, maybe if I bust tables at open mic, they'll notice me and they'll give me a chance, and then they'll see how good I am. And that's the hardest part. It's like the first 2 to 3 years of stand-up is just understanding that there is still a hierarchy, even if you get there early. That there's still going to be people that, because they work weekends for the club, they're going to get preferred spots at maybe an open mic, or they're gonna walk into an open mic at a bar that you're going up in 2 people, and like all of a sudden they bump in. Now they're gonna do 10 minutes, and then halfway through the comic after them, all the audience leaves, and you just, you know, there's frustration there because you wanted to go up in front of a group of people, and you feel like, you know, that if that guy hadn't bumped in, maybe I would have gotten the opportunity. And it's just, there's always little frustrations. I understand. I've been there. I've been the worst comic in this scene for a long time. And I just, you know, slowly, you know, gradually stop looking at all that stuff and just you have to look inward, is what I would say is my biggest advice, is that don't compare yourself to other people in stand up. Like, oh my gosh, like, I'll say at your level, we'll say maybe Dan Gilbert or, you know, Hakeem Yusuf. You can't compare Hakeem's, you know, bookings and everything else to yours. Like, if Hakeem's getting more than you, good for Hakeem. But I feel like a lot of people early on see that and wonder, well, why is he getting that versus me? We both started, you know, and it leads you down, I would say, a painful path, I will say. Is that you kind of, if you start looking at what other people are eating, then you're going to starve.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put that. And I think especially doing something like this, I feel like if you try to say that you're not somebody who hasn't had those feelings, like, and maybe not that you're like posting to everybody and saying like, this is bullshit, or you're like making a big scene about it or whatever, like, even if you don't do that, you're having those feelings in your head. I've had those feelings already. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I have to tell myself, hey man, this is like, you're not even 1 year old yet, dude. Like, you're a newborn. Like, you need to, yeah,
but I mean, that's newborn, but there's also newborn reactions. It's
yes.
A cry, you know, you have to learn how to process that, even, you know, like, just like a baby, if you're not being held, sometimes you're not gonna, crying's not gonna get you more. At some point, your parents are gonna put you down, and you're gonna have to go to sleep.
Right.
And so it's also, a newborn in that way of how do I react to, how do I handle my ego telling me I'm good enough for that, but those people telling, basically inferring I'm not.
Right. And I guess that's a good way. That's a good example of like where to kind of default and revert back to like the 4 agreements kind of thing, right? Where it's like, one of them is don't take anything personally, don't make it about you,
I don't know I don't have anything on the 4 agreements. I just,
it is whatever.
It's one of those things where I just looked at it and I was like, what can I do? And it's like, what can I do different? And I just 1 year in, like I was starting with a group of people, and it was I would say it was probably a toxic environment. There was another comic, and he was getting gigs and stuff, and he would call me every time he got a gig to say, hey, I got booked for this gig. I guess I'm just really good at this and stuff, and it I guess incited a jealousy in me, and we got to a point where we were just, it would just feel like almost low key bullying, and I was like, I'm done. And I started acting out of character. I started, getting, angry with that person for no reason. And I'm like, I'd rather just work on me. And so I did a lot of grunt work at clubs. I would help Linda at Backdoor. I would run the Hyenas Wednesday open mic when it was in Arlington, which was about as big as the one it is in Dallas, but I would host it from beginning to end. And I would just do little things like that. Like I just constantly worked. I would do as many open mics as I could in a night, because also I was living at home with my parents, and I didn't want to be there. So I would stay out till 3 and still have to work at 8:30 in the morning, but I would stay out till 3 because that was way more inviting than what was waiting for me at home.
Sure. No, that makes sense, man. Yeah, that's heavy. And dude, it was almost as big when they had was the Arlington location the original, or has Fort Worth always been the original?
Fort Worth was the original. Arlington was the second, I believe. And then Arlington, they moved Fort Worth to a different location in Arlington, and then they opened Dallas as the third, then Plano.
Okay. So anyway, my point in bringing that up was you're saying it was pretty much just as big as the Dallas list is, but yet you hosted the whole thing from A to Z.
50 to 80 comics.
Jesus.
And
wow. That's a commitment, dude. That's hardcore.
No one wanted to run it. Like I would also run an open mic on Monday because the person that was running it just disappeared, and I was like, I guess I'll run it. And so I ran that open mic on Monday, and then by that time Dallas had opened up and took over Wednesdays. Shortly after Dallas opened up, Arlington was sold to another group that ran it for a short period of time, and then they sold it to whatever it is now. It still says Comedy Club on it when you drive past it in Arlington. Like if you go down, it's on 360 in Arkansas. And so it'll say like Comedy Club.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was the original Arlington location. And it was probably the roughest environment. A lot of the Arlington improv is kind of a lot of based in that same area. Right.
Yeah. I caught the last of the first time I actually went up here in Dallas area was the last time they had the Tuesday open mic, that recently stopped. So I got my point is I got a little taste of what the vibe is. Yeah. I don't know if it was the same back then as it is now, but
well, it's a lot of people that have high expectations, even if it's a free show. And it's just, I would say it's rough because they're expecting quality, and if you're struggling, they're not going to be sympathetic.
Sure.
And so and I appreciate those kind of audiences too. Like I appreciated what happened Wednesday. I was like, it's interesting in an what I call urban comedy setting.
Yeah.
How people change gears, or how people's stuff, they would say their stuff, and how the audience just it just almost absorbed, and you got little to no response, and it was just fun to watch people like, oh, this kind of comedy exists as well. It is literally verbal kung fu. Like everybody's style is different, and not everybody's style can can win in every situation.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, man. Yeah, that was that was interesting, dude. Because like what we're talking about is that there was this girl that brought like a lot of different people at Hyena's open mic, and for like, would you say like maybe 30, 50 people?
I would say it was about 50 people, and it was an urban comedy setting. Her name was Kiki Dotson, and she that was her first time. She said she's gonna bring friends, and when I hear that, I'm like usually thinking, okay, 5 to 10 people. It's we'll put her near the end. But as the night progressed, groups of 5 would just keep coming in. Like during Tyson's set, I think 7 or 8 more people showed up, and then they didn't sit in the same location. So then Tyson, to his credit and his demise, decided to make them all sit together. And so I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I wonder if them sitting together then inspired them to... Because it's a lot of people probably also think this is a lot of people who've never been in a comedy club that are here to see one person, but they all know each other, and maybe they haven't seen each other in 2 or 3 years. So you're going to get, oh, hey, and that
Still got that van?
Well, yeah.
How's your dog?
Yeah, just that kind of conversation.
Yep.
And so I felt during my set there was a little bit of that going on, and I just go up and just do what I was going to do. I'm not going to turn the room or anything by trying to engage in crowd work. Even though it's open mic, I'm like, that's just not my style at this point. I may evolve into that at some point, but that's not me right now. I have things I want to work on. This group of people, I know I'm going to have to change some of my material a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, some of it doesn't work for them. Like, I know I couldn't do anything like about organic produce or anything like that. They weren't going to.
Sure.
So I did a lot of the, clothing and things that, obscurityism, not having healthcare and things of that nature that may be relatable to them. Like I'm trying to find what can I relate to them with?
Yeah. Yeah.
Me dating is not relatable to them.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I just, went through my Rolodex of stuff and like, buying clothes at Ross. I was like, that's something, I do and that they may, have experience with. And so, I just riffed on that for a little bit and then basically watched everybody else and made the judgment call to put her up early when people were carrying her out, to the bathroom and stuff. I was like, okay, she's not gonna make it to the block that we've assigned her to. And there's so many people in here and they have spent a good deal of money at the bar. And I was like, I can't not put her, I can't make her wait that long and it not go up, because then it's just going to be an absolute, it's going to be basically, a bunch of people yelling and screaming, like, how come you didn't put Kiki up? It's basically like a living Yelp review.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it comes down to a business decision at that point. You got these people came in, they're being good patrons. Like, hey, let's do this.
They were great. I was like, outside of a little bit of noise, but again, that whole group is not coming back again. They were there for the debut. About maybe half, if that many, will come back for your second. That's why, as a showcase format that I'm trying to develop, is I don't want people to do that just because they bring people. I don't want to have people on every single showcase I put out because they can bring 50 people. I was like, at some point those 50 are going to stop, and I want you to have those 50 somewhat still available. Maybe not all, when you get good enough that, wow, it's worth the price of admission. Because early on, it's just seeing your debut and like that's what you do. But you evolve so much in this game that if they only see like the very first steps of your career, it takes them forever to come out and to find, to actually make an effort to come see you, because they'll say they will. They don't want to hurt your feelings or your friends. But I also get that they don't want to see the same thing you did last time. The same 5 minutes. It's after about 3 times they're like, okay, that's all he's gonna do. And it's, then they'll say, oh, I can't make it, or all of a sudden the excuses start to come of, oh, we got something else planned, we'll try. and then you just, they never see your growth. So I want to try to rotate it, but as far as a carrot is that, hey, I'll have somebody there to video it so that you'll have a demo reel, a 5-minute demo reel, or if you're selected to host, if you're on the verge of hosting for Hyenas, then hey, host, you get a hosting reel that you can send to other clubs saying, hey, I'm an MC, here's my MC reel. Maybe you can get into accepted to clubs around here like Looney Bins or Loonies in Colorado. And then for the people that are already openers, they're going to close the show with 25 to 30 minutes. And hey, that's a feature reel to send to comics. And so it's kind of like I wanted to make it like a next step, not something that's got my name on it, but more, this is what we're trying to do here. This is the in between before you get selected as an MC or moved from MC to feature. This is kind of the play. This is kind of that in between. And for people that, that are killing it at open mics, this is what a real show feels like. This is how you can gauge your 5 minutes and say, oh, I need to work on this versus this, because at open mic sometimes you don't realize what does work versus what doesn't, because you're performing for a room full of comics. Is you may have stuff that when comics laugh at it, that's just too mean. It's just, that's making a comic laugh is like, wow, that's either a really awkward situation, and a normal audience will feel that more than a comic.
100%, man. Absolutely. That's what I've seen, and on the note of like debuts and trying to like get too hopeful and stuff like that. So I don't even count this, but back in 2012, that's technically, if I want to be technical about it, that's the first time that I tried stand up. Mm-hmm. Right. So I did, and this is why I don't count it, because I did 3 open mics and 1 showcase, and then I quit. So that doesn't even count. It was less than a month, right? So I did like 3 open mics in LA, right? I just got lucky. I said some like decent stuff and had a decent little 3-minute set, right? And then so this comic that was in the audience was like, "Hey man, that's pretty good. You want to be on my showcase?" Like, it was like this bar show in Hollywood, and I was thinking, obviously, like I walked away that night going, "That's how it's done. Like this is easy," you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so then I go and do this showcase. Eat absolute shit, just completely bomb, you know what I mean? And then I was just like, fuck this, like, and it's like, so I had a little bit of that experience under my belt. So when I come back now, years later, I'm like, nah, man, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I need to take time. When I first get up there, it's not going to be good at all. First while is not going to be good. I need to keep doing it, build up the muscles, and start figuring out what works and what doesn't work and stuff. So I'm glad you said that, because now, like versus then, like my wife was like, "Yeah, we want to come see." I'm like, "No, don't come. I'm not good yet." Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, wait. I'll let you know when I think it's time for you to actually see something that's going to be interesting for you. You know what I mean? So I totally get what you're saying, with that.
And it just, your friends will have lives as well. They're not going to be available every weekend you perform to basically, try to make you famous.
Right. Yeah, exactly, man. And it's all about, and obviously nothing's wrong with bringing people that to come and see what you're doing, but at the same time, wait. In my opinion, it's like, and I think you agree, it's just kind of, wait till you've invested some time in it, till you have a good gauge on what you're doing is, like you said, worth the price of admission kind of thing.
Well, I would say, just space it out. Don't be like, okay, say my show comes out in March. Do my show in March, then I want to do one in June. Oh, can I do the one in June? I'll bring no, let's do it maybe once or twice a year, so that those people that do come see the change, they don't see a minuscule amount of change. That's why I only try to watch the whole open mic once a month, because it's like, I can't, it's more apparent when you don't see somebody and then you see them and then you see the growth versus watch them every single set to try and see where they're growing. It's hard to see, and I like to be surprised with it. I want you to hit me with it. I don't want it to be something that, every time, like I'm also working as a comic, so it's one of those things where you can't watch everybody's water boil. You have to set it and then come back and say, oh wow, they've made some changes. And so I'm learning to be blunt and honest and things like that. It's hard. Like will admit when I first took this role with Hyenas to, help people, get into the opening and stuff like that, I was afraid that everybody was going to ask me every minute of every day, like, how do I do, what do you think of this set? What do you think of this set? And I've been surprisingly, not bombarded, but at the same time, I've watched people grow, and I've grown as a person, because I used to be like, trying to find a friendly way to say, you're close, instead of saying you're not ready. You're close. And so that I felt like, okay, I'm giving people false hope that maybe they're on the doorstep, and that this one little thing is going to set them off, when I should be saying, you're just not ready. You need to work, material wise. That's where you're weakest. I'm not going to tell you how to write your jokes. That's not my job. I want you to figure out how to get how to make your stuff work on a universal level on your own. There's classes like Dean Lewis. I mean, you can take comedy, Dallas Comedy Club's comedy course, or Stomping Ground. They may have a stand-up course. That's 3 comedy, workshop courses that you can take to work on the writing, things like that. Mm-hmm. That's your baby. I'm looking more at how you look on stage and how the audience is reacting.
Of course.
And so there'll be people that'll tell me that, so I don't see what you see in so-and-so. And I'm like, well, you have to put them in a room and then just listen to the room at some points. It may not everybody's comedy is your cup of tea. I mean, you're going to find different comics funny than an Emily Grief or a Paul Smith or a Casey Coleman or a Mana. They're all going to have different
voices.
We all have different idols. We all have different people we enjoy. And so you just have to listen to the room at some points and say, okay, that guy, even though I feel like his material maybe to me doesn't seem like it's creative, this room is going bananas. I owe it to him to try to develop him into something, something more. And like, I can give him tips, but I can't be like, this joke about, being a dad, I don't know if that works. I can say, have you thought of it from this angle? Have you thought of, talking about being a dad from another angle? Or, instead of talking about what sucks about it, what's scary, what's weird? There's all different kinds, there's different ranges of emotions you can throw out there to try to relate to people, mm-hmm. versus just, this, this is crazy, or this is, this will make me see angry. Some people, just try to tap into one emotion. I'm like, but there's so many different other feelings. You just make sure you let the audience know what feeling you're doing. Don't go into it and get angry. Tell them, hey, this makes me angry. And then your joke explains why. But other than that, like, I don't like to tell people how to write. I want people to learn. And then when, them come back around and me find what they've learned, I'm like, oh, wow, that's, that definitely is, you've definitely come a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. Like in what you said, but that's what you were talking about, is you can't just sit there every week or every night and watch people, because it's just like going to the gym, or just like being on a diet or something, trying to lose weight. Like if I see you on a diet every day and I see you every day all day, I'm not going to notice a change after a couple months as much as if I didn't see you for a couple months ago. Oh, wow, dude, you've lost 20 pounds. Like, so that totally makes sense, because the progress is, like you said, it's like watching that pot boil. It's like, if I just sit there and wait for those bubbles, I'm not going to notice much. It's like personally with me, like in the super short amount of time that I've been doing it, like I've been super dedicated. I've been doing, I'd say on the low end 4, and then on the high end 6 to 8 open mics a week, since June. So like I've been working at it. Like what I try to do is those opportunities when I do get to perform in front of like quote unquote normal people, you know what I mean? And I have a little bit of a crowd, whether it's 2 or 4 people, or whether it's like, 15 or 20 or whatever, if I get really lucky. I listen actively to their reaction. Like what I say, is this funny to them? And if it's not funny to them, it's not funny. You know what I mean? If it's funny, then, then it might be working kind of thing,
It's just, I would say, try not to look at it as funny and unfunny, because sometimes what becomes a trap is that if you try to write to find the funny in every situation, is that you come to the lowest hanging fruit of that situation, where it's like, it's a lot of that's just like, sex, or like I took a comedy class with somebody, and she was talking. In one of the comedy classes, you write together, and one of my other comics was with a group, another person in that group, and she had a joke where these Sprouts or Whole Foods, all their aisles are super tiny, and she talks about it, and first thing she talks about, oh, here comes like I'm getting raped by cucumber bread, and it's like. That's the you're trying to horn in a sex joke into shopping at like Whole Foods or Sprouts, and it's like, I'm like that's the easy answer to the question is, oh, cucumber bread, you know what that means, and I'm like there's real situations, like it's instead of trying to immediately try to horn this sex joke into shopping at Whole Foods. Immerse yourself in shopping at Whole Foods and just exaggerate what's weird. Like, an easy example is Cristela Alonso talks about the prices and how you have to have a cosigner. For some of the stuff, like I made 3 payments on my salary this week. It's just, and there's honest ways of finding funny things happening than to just immediately jump to like a sex joke or the first answer to the question. And so I always try to write, when I try to write it in my head twice before I even put it on paper. Because those first 2 times are going to be, that's what somebody else is going to say. That's what, I just like, why waste the ink and paper on something that somebody else has probably already thought of? And I start trying to think deeper, like, no, what's really bugging you about this? Like my joke about Rubik's Cubes, it worked the first time, and then for a year I couldn't get it to work. And the Rubik's Cube, I just basically, the punchline is this guy I work with, they were working behind for me, and they were just running Rubik's Cubes, like they're solving them left and right. And I was like, why is this bothering me? Because they're smarter than me. How can I win in this situation? I'll report them as a racist because they're making sure to put every single color on its own separate side.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and so that it was just a long journey of trying to find a way to say that in a way that people related and were on my side, because it's, Rubik's Cube's racist. Well, that, how is it racist? No.
Yeah.
And so when you come at it from that way of somebody annoying you and how can I get rid of this guy?
Right. Yeah, because I feel like you're talking about it, just like going from a different angle that someone wouldn't normally consider. Because when I think of, like, if you were to say, if you didn't tell me what you just told me with like trying to work out that joke, if you just said like, what is your opinion on Rubik's Cube? Like if you heard someone talk about it, if you were going to talk about a Rubik's Cube on stage, what would you do? I would, my default, like without trying to think about it as a joke, just like what would I relate to as an audience member is like, it's like kind of hard, or like you have to figure it out or something, like, or it takes practice. Not that it's racist. It's like racist. Well, how's it? Yeah. And then if you got deliver on something, it's like, I hadn't thought about that. You know what I mean?
Like you just think nerds, or immediately it's like, oh, they're nerds.
Yeah,
I mean, like how many people have probably come up with the nerd solving the Rubik's Cube? Right. Over time, like not even just now, but just over time, because you have to. I always feel like in every comedy city, there's at least 100 people doing comedy. Is what I've always, and so it's hard as a person, any person. You can say any, because there's one of you in every city in this country. And there's hundreds of cities that have stand-up scenes. And so how do you stand out versus the other? There's always a guy that's wearing a cowboy hat. There's an urban comic. There's all these comics in every single scene, no matter how big or small. So how is your voice different than? And that's what I always try to struggle with when my writing is like, how can I make my voice different than 100 other people that probably are just like me, having the same thought I am.
Yeah. Like a lot of what I've been hearing too, a lot of the constructive advice like that I've been hearing, and what I try to do personally, like especially at this stage in the game for me, is I just try to like obviously there's certain things that I have thoughts about, right, that I try to write jokes, but I really just try to be honest. I really just try to talk about like what's my reality like and what are the funny things about that, right? Like,
or just not even funny. Just again, see that, because that becomes a trap. Is you try to find only the funny things.
True.
What is one of the most mundane things about being a metal musician? Because I interviewed a a artist from gosh, I can't think of their death metal band, and she's like, they go on tour all the time, and you know, and I was like, you know, what's, you know, some of the mundane things that a metal person, like, there's the Coheed and Cambria story where the guy, you know, breaks into the pharmacy and stuff like that. But, you know, what are some of the mundane things about, you know, being a metal musician? You know, like, like off the top, you're a father of two or about to be.
Yep.
What kind of lullabies? You know, how do you sing lullabies as a metal musician?
Yeah, dude. Or it's more, combining the two. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, in terms of like the transfer to fatherhood for me is I was trying to figure out how to work. Not even trying to force the funniness of it, but I was just thinking, what blows me away is just how uncool you are and how uncool life becomes for you. Like when you have like a newborn and you're waking up at like 3:30 in the morning and like you're giving the baby a bottle and it like pukes all over you and you're just sitting there like tired, half aware, like covered in like newborn baby puke and like trying to feed them. You're just like, I've had numerous nights like that where I was thinking to myself, not as much anymore because he's a little bigger now, but in the beginning I'm just thinking like, this is the opposite of being cool, man. Like this is the opposite of what you'd assume, you know?
But I mean, you were used to that as a male musician. How many bandmates have you like had to wake up at 3 a.m. they're thrown up on you?
Thrown up or like, all that stuff, like in terms of, that kind of like daily thing of like, it becomes kind of like Groundhog Day. It's like the same thing every night. You know what I mean?
So how do you, as a metal musician, how would you, you know, what of your friends have you done to your, you know, use for your children, basically, like bandmate?
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Like having someone get sick or like having to pull over, you know, the van, you know, to let them out.
Tell people we got to go, like, oh, baby's trash. We got to get him back.
Yeah. Combining it together. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, there's just little things every day you do that you have to think about. And it's it's really, you know, it's interesting. Like, I thought I had the other day as I was driving by a gas station, I had the air station, and how it's like if you go to that air station when somebody else is using it, how they will, even if their tire's fully fixed and the machine's still running, they won't move their car until the machine turns off because they don't want to help some other Samaritan that's got a flat tire. They'll buy your coffee. No big deal, but you got a flat tire. No, you're not. My 15 cents left of air is not going into your tire.
Yeah, you're right.
This is where I make my stand.
That's true. Yeah, it's different. Not as much of a nice guy in that situation.
And it's like a more desperate situation. I'm in my car, you know, because my car is running and it's a Lexus, it's okay to buy my coffee. You realize that I'm making money too and that I can probably afford the car behind me. Yeah, for sure. Like that's the only reason they can pay it forward. Oh, you can see the car behind you see the hot girl in the car behind you.
Yeah.
It's smooth.
Yeah, totally. How recent did you have to get air in your tire recently?
No, I just realized that I've had to get.
You've been in that situation.
Yeah, and it's like either they're parked there or somebody else is using it, and then they won't leave until the machine cuts off. And you know, I don't. Part of it wasn't cared. It was like I'm late for work. Like I need to get there so I can. I'm trying to do this all in one swoop so I can get to the office. Yeah. And they were just like. And they just sat there, and then when the machine cut off, then they drove away, and I was like, okay,
yeah, for sure.
It's air. Like if I could blow air into my tire, I would. Okay, like I don't, you know, it's just I'm having a flat tire. You guys apparently, you know, obviously you care more about, you know, your 50 cents than I do. Like I understand it's a long distance phone call to air up your tire these days.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, man. Here's something actually that you were saying before that I don't want to forget that I was going to ask you. So when you're like talking about like open mics and stuff, and you mentioned like some people are going to like do crowd work and stuff like that. Generally speaking, because I always wondered about this, is it kind of like, is it a good idea, bad idea, or just it's whatever to do crowd work when you're doing an open mic? Like if you have some kind of crowd, or what's your opinion on that?
If you're going to do it, I always advise it be later in the block. Don't be the first or second guy up, because then you're putting in their heads that it's okay to talk. And the next 6 comics may not, either one, want that, or two, not be prepared or experienced enough to handle that. And so you'll watch a lot of comics with deer in the headlights of, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to tell my jokes, and I'm getting, overloaded with input because I'm trying to think of what I'm going to say. And these people are saying something. Should I say something back to them? What do I say back to them? Do I just keep going? And so you watch people just kind of fluster and either one, get really frustrated or mad because they either bite the bullet and do crowd work and then feel like they just wasted their night, or, they do it and do crowd work and like, okay, I did crowd work, but that's not what I wanted to do. And so if you want to do crowd work, I would suggest like do it later in the show. That way they've seen some comedy and they're not going to pipe up for everybody. But if you are the first two people up and both of you do crowd work, now they think that's what the show is. They think, oh, it's, input is, not input, but I guess image is everything. And so in your mind, you put the image that this is how comedy works, is that they get to heckle back. And it's not how it works for the most part. You will get kicked out of most comedy clubs for being that kind of person.
True. Right. Got you. Yeah. Cause the way that I look at it, especially being new, the last thing I want to do is be labeled as the guy that walked the crowd. You know what I mean? Because I always try to keep that in mind, because it's rare, as an open micer, you have an opportunity to try your stuff in front of regular people that are just there to listen. So when we all have that opportunity, the last thing we want is to have someone offend or throw them off and then they leave. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But at the same time, then you're living in this anxiety of not being who you are because you're just trying to keep the status quo.
True. Yeah.
And
that's a good point.
I feel like it becomes more like on Wednesday, it became more about people not walking them than it was about them actually doing their set. And so I felt like some people were, they were trying to do crowd work, talk to them to keep them to stay, versus I'm going to do my stuff regardless and see what kind of feedback I get in this kind of environment. You never know when you're going to be asked to do a show and that's going to be your audience. How would you fare? Okay. Noted. I need to, maybe I need to do something that's a little bit more relatable or open instead of just, a recited poem of, sex jokes or some, or Tinder.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, man. And going back to the idea of the kind of reality of, when you're new, you're going to be going up late. You're going to be waiting for a 3-minute or maybe a 5-minute spot, when you're doing club open mics. I feel for me, that whole thing is a test for me that I've been passing so far, but that keeps me committed, because it's well, how much do you want this, man? How much do you care about it? How much do you want to pursue it? How much do you actually care? And it's the answer is, at least so far, I care a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm waiting. You know what I mean? And I understand there's people that have been doing it a lot longer than me. And that's why. And I understand that whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, because that's how it works in a lot of work work environment, a lot of different work environments, not just comedy, but offices. That's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. Seniority. It's you got to prove yourself and how long you've been committed to something. That goes in music. That's a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? So I get that. You know what I mean? But then the question lies in, at the end of the day, this is all about you. No one's going to do this stuff for you. You got to do it. So am I actually going to do it? Well, so far it's fulfilling to me, because it's no, man, this is how much I want to do. I want to pursue this. You know what I mean? Because it's I'm waiting and I'm staying and I'm doing this thing. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but there's also still things you can work on with no audience.
What are some of those things to hear from you?
So say you got something where it's a tongue twister kind of thing to say, where it's a lot of alliteration or a lot of S sounds or something. You can work on just saying it slowly so that you don't overspeak or, I guess, mince words, or where you do that, because when you're in front of people, your mind races, and in a panic, you try to get through some of this stuff, and your head will start going faster than this. and you'll start saying things that are 2 sentences ahead of where you are now. And so you'll stumble over your words. And so sometimes you can just work on just pacing. You can watch a video of yourself and see, okay, I'm doing these things. I can do a video of this and see if I kind of curb those habits. Maybe I don't put my hand in my pocket. Maybe I don't, rock back and forth because I'm nervous and I don't feel comfortable standing still, or, I want to move, but I don't know how. So I'm just sitting here rocking back and forth and just try to work out all those little physical things. You can work on those things. You can work on just being comfortable with the fact there's no noise coming from the audience. That's a huge one to have, because if you're okay with in an empty room, when it's totally silent in a full room, you don't get thrown off to the point that, oh my God, I don't know what I did wrong. Because if you only perform in front of people, you're used to only having people respond. And when people don't respond, you panic. And now you all of a sudden start speeding up. You start trying to win it back, trying to get the laughs, trying to get yourself comfortable because they're not laughing at you. And now you feel uncomfortable being in front of 150, 100, 200, 300, however many people are in the room, instead of just being like, hey, that happens sometimes. Maybe they all got something, on their phones. Maybe an Amber Alert just came out and everybody's looking down at their phones. You can't sit there and panic and think, oh my God, I've lost everybody. But everybody, on some levels, you will do that. You will be moments where you have panic on stage, and it's just going up late at night, get you comfortable with the fact the room's not making noise, and you're not shook. You can then kind of go, okay, they didn't feel that one. What else can I do? And just go from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's totally cool. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, or like you said, man, I mean, getting comfortable with the silence, but then also, hey man, no one's here anyway. It's not like there's like 50 people in here that I'm going to mess up in front of. Let me try this thing out that's really complicated. Let me just work through it, because if I mess it up here.
Yeah, a lot of it's physical, making sure I stand in the stage light, because I don't know how much in music you do that, but there's a square in the middle front of the stage, and there are people at the very end of the mic that were getting on the very corner of the stage, and it's like, but nobody can see you because the lights aren't programmed to be at the front corner. They're programmed to be front middle square, and anything outside of those squares, you kind of get lost in the light. Yeah,
that's a funny story, man. This one comic that I watched, like, that's a friend of mine. We were at the DCC open mic, and that one, like the way that small room is set up, like the light is even more dramatic of a contrast, man. Like if you're not in the middle, like you are basically in the shadows. And like during his 5-minute set, he went, and this is an honest mistake. It happened to anybody. It could happen to me. You know what I mean? But like, it was just like he kept drifting farther and farther to the right, and then by the time he was done, it was like he was completely in the dark almost.
Yeah,
and that's a good point, because that's something to be careful of.
There's just little technical things that you can work on, or just things that you can solve on your own time that you don't. You still need stage time to do it, but it's just being comfortable. Okay, and taking a deep breath. Okay, I'm up here, because there's lots of times where I've gone up in a full room and just everything's just falling on the ground. Like think of it, going up in comedy as a stack of school books, and then just immediately tripping and dropping everything, and then your whole set is you trying to pick up all the books, because the books got to be stacked in a certain order, and if they're not in that order, now they don't make sense, and so now you're just grabbing at books, and just trying to so just a second, I got, and you're just done.
Yeah, for sure. Do you find do you find yourself, because like obviously like you're a comic, but then at the same time you have some like other duties, you know what I mean? Like you're talking about like with like keeping track of like who's getting better, and you got to schedule stuff, you got to book stuff. Do you find yourself like putting on, is it like set times where you wear the different hats and put them on and take them off, or is it all just kind of fluid and just like a combo all the time?
It's all kind of fluid. I mean, I try to at the open mics, listen to some people, once a month on Wednesdays, I'll listen to the whole show and just see, okay, am I putting somebody in the 7th block that's probably should be in the 4th or 5th, and just trying to gauge, where they are, and who can I rely on in the later blocks to be somebody that'll do things the right way without me being there. So if I have to leave early for a holiday or something, or Scotty has to run it, that it runs smoothly versus, oh, they can't, they just, run, because I felt like I want people to feel like even though I'm not there, that there are people that will report to me. I have people that work in the clubs that are feature headliner that are on the shows with the MCs, and they'll tell me if somebody's doing something. And so I'm like, you guys, I trust you, but you're not safe.
Sure.
Because I want you guys to also progress, because I don't want you to feel like just because you're here, you're in. I want you to feel like, okay, I need to also progress because other people are on their way in. And so I want to be one of those people that goes out through the promotion door versus, just disappear or, demotion door.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And actually that's really great to hear, because you sometimes, like you said at the beginning of our conversation, it's easy, as you know, to feel that way, especially when you're new, to be like, am I yelling to avoid here? Like, what's going on? What am I doing? You know what I mean? It's like, no, dude, like, people, even though you might not think so, people are watching you progress slowly. If you're progressing, people are paying attention. And if you're doing something that's not good or that you're not supposed to be, people are seeing that. You know what I mean? It's not all just in the ether. Like, this is, nothing's on accident. Like, certain things are noticed, certain things are, very little goes unnoticed, so it's good to hear that stuff, because as you know, if you're going up after midnight, you know what I mean, in front of like 2 other comics, like, you think like, oh, this doesn't matter. Well, you should more treat it like it does matter. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it does. Yeah. More than you think.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things of, I'm sure, I know it's frustrating. We've all been there. But but again, open mics are about knowing faces and basically the people that you recognize, the people that help, the people that work, the people that are working, and you build that's how you build those relationships. And you just, try to explain, as best you can, like, hey, I'm sorry, but this person's, I'm sorry, but I trust this person more than you at this point. Just like, trusting people with house keys or anything else. Like, there are people that you're going to trust more than others.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. What would you say, and I usually do about an hour, on mine, so we're coming to the end here. That's the only reason I'm checking my phone, just to check the time. It's not like I'm checking for updates. One thing that I'll say is, like, so when you make that transition, I feel like there's like the open micer to like doing some shows as well. That's a transition for any comic. That's a transition, right? She's like, okay, cool. Now I'm like doing shows. So it's not just open mics, it's shows. And then I feel like the next transition is like, after you start you doing more shows, right? Then there's like shows locally, and then there's shows on the road. So like one of the last things I'll ask you, with your experience and stuff, do you, is it kind of way more refreshing to, like, when you go and do those road gigs and you do those shows out of town, because it's like a completely new environment, it's a completely new audience and stuff like that? Or is it? It's
a double-edged sword. I would say in some ways it's anxiety, because sometimes you'll have a lot of local references. Like when you go to Wichita, Kansas, there are no Whataburgers, there are no Jack in the Boxes. And you don't realize that until the 4th show on Saturday, when you're about to drive home, and they tell you the only thing we have is like this place called Spangles. And so they don't know about the fast food places. They don't even have a Kroger in Wichita. So you learn that not everybody has that. And so you have this anxiety of, okay, what do I do in these situations where the punchline's a local reference? Like, I can't do certain things about my bit because it involves me saying mesquite, or something so inside baseball that outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they're not going to get it. And so it's just trying to also have a road universal set that helps you, navigate that, because that's the biggest anxiety, is just, are these people going to relate to me? And it happens to everybody. Like, oh my God, as people in Milwaukee, Wisconsin going to, relate to me? Or am I going to be the LA comic comes in that talks about airports and stuff like that? Because that's a lot of what comics know. But at the same time, how many times have I been in an airport during my comedy career? 0. I haven't been on an airplane. Well, I think maybe my first year in comedy, I had to travel for work, and last time I've been on an airplane is like 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
wow, that's a long time.
yeah. So it's like, in some cases, your life isn't. A lot of people don't do airports. You can get away with that in New York and LA because a lot of people fly in and fly out of LA. But when you go to like Wisconsin or Nebraska, they don't. You think those guys go to the airport on a daily?
It's gonna be less frequent for sure. Yeah.
And so it's one of those things of trying to find other things to talk about that's universal that you can take to Milwaukee or Nebraska or something like that gets you the same kind of laughs as an airport joke in LA.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah, getting a pulse on that, and you learn to like read the crowd and read the room in a completely different way. Not just like, oh, who's here, but like also where am I? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense, and I'm sure it probably becomes second nature over time. Well, once again, man, I really appreciate you spending some time with me. I know I've learned some new stuff from the conversation, man. It's always great to talk to super experienced people like yourself, man. So, yeah, really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. But in the meantime, thanks for everybody that's tuning in. Thanks for everybody that's helped me out and listening so much. Let's keep building Crux Nation. I'm going to catch you next time. Crux, yeah.
Let me hear you say Crux, yeah. Crux, yeah. Let me hear you say Crux, yeah. Crux, yeah. Crux, yeah podcast.
Crux, Crawford.
You were clout chasing, faking that